Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Scottish Labour, like all parties across this chamber, continue to support Curriculum for Excellence. We want it to work, and it is for that reason Scottish Labour have brought forward this debate today. So members can raise concerns, reflect on the evidence to the Education Committee yesterday, and ask the Scottish Government to spell out fully what it intends to do to allay the concerns of teachers, parents and pupils. We have a responsibility and a duty to listen to the concerns over preparation for new National 4 and 5 exams in May and the proposed implementation of new National 6 higher courses in June. I would say at the outset that Scottish Labour, of course, welcomes the announcement of extra resources made on Friday ahead of the Education Committee yesterday. I hope this announcement will settle some of the nerves held by teachers and parents. However, we have to recognise this has come very late in the day. These belated actions are welcome, but the Minister should have made these resources available long before now. The Scottish Government has been warned by teachers, by parents, by pupils and by local authorities for over 2 years. Indeed, Labour brought forward a debate in March 2012 to raise those concerns. What we have seen since is months of complacency and the Scottish Government grossly underestimating and ignoring teacher workload issues and concerns. As Larry Flanagan, EIS General Secretary, said yesterday, the resources are very welcome, but I quote, "But it will not have a major impact on National 4 and National 5 because we are only 6 school weeks away from the deadline for those qualifications." We have to take very seriously what our teachers have said and the concerns they continue to raise. The EIS also told the Education Committee it would not be an exaggeration to say that we have not encountered as widespread anger and disappointment and frustration with the exams authority as we are currently witnessing. They go on. Our members feel the SQA communication has not been effective, support has not been sustained or sufficient, and that too much bureaucracy has crept into the process. The SSTA have listed 31 complaints in 6 different areas. They complain about the impenetrability of the SQA website, the lack of time to prepare for new hires, the materials from SQA that contain mistakes, grammatical errors and poor quality graphics, the extreme shortage of clear exemplars, the lack of detail and direction in marking schemes, inconsistency of standards by different verifiers and the workload issue with many teachers working in excess of 50 and some 60 hours a week. They also raise concerns about Education Scotland, who they accuse of seriously failing to deliver real support, and about there being virtually no course text available. Although Alan Mackenzie, General Secretary of the SSTA, has also welcomed the Government announcement last week, he did acknowledge that it is not the complete answer to the problems our members have identified. The current situation is completely unacceptable, and it needs further urgent action from the Scottish Government to address the outstanding issues and concerns teachers have. We've seen a couple of press releases and from the Scottish Government and the SQA over the last week, which are welcome, but what we should have is a full report and full details of what the Scottish Government are going to do to address these concerns. What is the Scottish Government going to do about the lack of practice papers? To ensure teachers have sufficient higher textbooks, to ensure that we do not see industrial action taken by teachers, to ensure that those with additional support needs and those pupils studying qualifications at colleges get the support they need? And what is the Scottish Government going to do to address all the other concerns we heard at the committee yesterday? On the issue of practice papers, we heard yesterday that teachers urgently want free practice papers in each subject. Yet at the moment, they will receive only one. The Minister has said this is adequate. Can I tell the Minister that teachers do not think this is adequate, and I believe parents and pupils would agree. It's not good enough for the Minister to say he is listening. He needs to act, and with only 6 teaching weeks left before the new exams, he needs to act urgently. If the Scottish Government disagree with Scotland's teachers and feel nothing more is required, then I hope the Minister, who is ultimately responsible, will tell the Chamber that all the necessary support and resources are in place to allow teachers to deliver on these important changes. The Scottish Government, in the interest of transparency and reassuring parents, must also compile and publish a report on how many pupils are studying new hires and the existing hires, and in what subjects, as soon as possible. We need to hear reassurances from the Minister, because there are clearly many concerns teachers have about workload and assessment issues. An AIS survey from December showed that in Renfrewshire, 92% of teachers have spent more time on curriculum development than allocated in their working time agreement, and do not feel confident in delivering the new higher exam. Some of the comments from teachers that responded said, "Never before have I disliked coming to work. I am by nature an organised person, and I am finding the stress of not knowing unbearable. Late information from the SQA has been a major factor." Another said, "The SQA have made a real mess of the implementation of N5, and I have no confidence that they will be any better in the new hire." Another said, "The lack of planning, organisation and support given to teachers is a disgrace." Another said, "We are starting 2014 with SQA still making changes to units which pupils are presenting for in May, a disgrace." Another put it simply, "The SQA implementation of the senior phase has been a disaster." I'm happy to give way to the Minister, who I hope will respond to the concerns of those teachers.
Alistair Allen.
Well, I'm grateful for these issues being raised, and as I've indicated throughout this process, that the Government is keen to hear from teachers. I think it's an important point to make, and will he not consider this, that the reason for the SQA making changes to some of the materials is specifically on the request for teachers. So will he not accept that if we are to respond to teachers, or if the SQA is to respond to teachers, it has to act on those responses, and we can't complain about the fact that they have?
I think teachers can complain about the situation, because it's a completely unacceptable situation, and we'll come to the reasons why we need a review. And I think we need to have a review for the very reasons that the Minister's just outlined, that teachers has taken an outcry in the teaching community to get some of these changes in place. And those teachers that I've mentioned are not alone. I've received emails from teachers across the country. To put it simply again, this is a completely unacceptable situation. We need to understand what has went wrong and what can be improved. We also need to understand why support has taken so long to arrive. We need to know why warnings were ignored. In March 2012, in a debate in this chamber, the Cabinet Secretary, Mike Russell, said, "I do not believe that any teacher in Scotland who has the right support, the right help and the right leadership, which will come from government, from Education Scotland, from the local authority and from within their school, cannot rise to the challenge and deliver the conclusion of a programme that has been 8 years in the making." Well, Presiding Officer, given that so many pupils will not be teaching and so many schools will be teaching and so many pupils will not be studying new hires next year, one must deduce, by the words of the Cabinet Secretary, that our teachers have not had the right support, the right help and the right leadership. I'm happy to give away what has happened.
The member has just asserted, given that so many pupils will not be studying the new hires next year, could the member perhaps benefit the chamber by telling me what number that is? What precise number of pupils will not be studying the new hires next year?
Neil Bibby.
Presiding Officer, if you forgive me, I didn't know I'd assumed the position of Cabinet Secretary for Education. And if I was the Cabinet Secretary for Education, I would want to know how many children were in that situation. And I think it absolutely shows that the Cabinet Secretary has not got a handle on this situation, that he's asking me how many people will be studying hires next year. Instead of the leadership, you don't know, Mr Russell, and that is clearly concerning. But instead of leadership, we have seen complete complacency and inaction
can we have a bit of order
from
now,
the Cabinet
please?
Secretary.
Order. Thank you.
It has actually fallen to local authorities such as Fife Council to give the leadership lacking in the actions from the Cabinet Secretary, such as their commitment to ensuring no pupils are disadvantaged. Fife Council put in additional funds of over £400,000. In contrast, we have seen mixed messages coming from the Scottish Government and Education Scotland. We have seen the Chair of the Curriculum for Excellence Board writing a letter on 8th of November 2013 stating that there was an expectation that all schools would implement the new hires, only for that advice to be amended just 12 days later. Like the EIS, I hope, in spite of the lack of support and leadership they have received, that the commitment of teachers will ensure that this diet is successful. However, they are also absolutely right to call for a review of this process, because lessons must be learned. That is why we are calling for urgent action, but also calling for an independent review of the actions of the SQA Education Scotland and the Scottish Government in relation to preparing for the new exams and courses. It is vital
Would you like to
lessons are
move your
learned
motion
so
as
we
you
can
draw to a
prevent it from
close,
happening
please?
again. Presiding Officer, we have an unacceptable situation and the Scottish Government have been complacent. We have heard serious concerns from the front line, from teachers on the ground. The Scottish Government have failed to listen. They now need to listen fully and act on what's been said. Curriculum for Excellence represents a great opportunity for our young people and we want it to succeed. I move the motion.
Now call